Feeling so stuck in my head that I forget just about everything my therapist said. Maybe I'm self-helpless.
Hey everyone, welcome to Self-Helpless, where science, spirituality, and sustainability are brunch buddies. I'm Delanie Fischer, and details about today's topic can be found in the episode description. Returning listeners, if an episode of Self-Helpless has supported you in some way, a quick 5-star rating or review, if you haven't left one already, honestly keeps this indie podcast alive amidst the big old budget behemoths out there. So thank you for feeding the algorithm a little treat for me. Ad-free episodes are now on Patreon at patreon.com/selfhelpless, and info about some free goodies will be shared in the outro. Okay, it's podcast time. What have been some of the most fascinating discoveries for you personally, and how did they impact the way that you perceive ancient versus modern civilizations?
Yeah. So 1.6% of our history is recorded. You know, how long have we been recording history? 5,000 years, 6,000 years, something like that.
Mhm.
And humans have been around for 300,000 years. That's just a small fraction. Did we know something earlier on? So I'm going to just say, kind of what happened to me. I was sitting there one day watching the History Channel, and they're talking about this vending machine they had in ancient Rome.
Wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, is that right? They had a vending machine. Yeah, they had a vending machine. You'd put a Roman coin in it, and it would dispense holy water at temples. That water that would came out would be turned into steam, and they would send it up to this idol's face and make it look like the idol was crying, like tears. And so it was really a way for them to get more donations. Not
Interesting.
And then this story about the terracotta army in
Mm.
China. I don't know, probably not everybody's familiar with that army, but there are over 7,000 of these terracotta warriors that were built in the year 2010 BC by
Yeah.
Qin Shi of China. And he's called the first emperor. And these statues, they're warriors, chariots, horses, strong men, musicians, all kinds of court figures that were built to keep guard over his mausoleum. And that mausoleum is 538 acres in size,
Oh my gosh.
2 million square meters of space. So this thing is huge. That alone is interesting. The
Yeah.
other thing is that they found swords that were still sharp. If you find swords today that were built, buried in the Middle Ages, and the knights of the Round Table were there and everything, that those swords are not only dull, but they're rusted and pitted, and you might find pieces of it, but
Right.
these swords that are in 2010 BC are still sharp. And they found that they used chrome in the manufacturing of these swords. Well, we didn't start using chrome in our manufacturing until the 1800s. We're finding stuff out that we already knew about.
Right. Yes, we're relearning things that we used to know.
And not like a new invention. It's just like, well, we're finding it again. We think it's new. you know,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
story about cataracts, when the lens of your eye gets cloudy, and typically that happens in people who are older, and they have to go have cataract surgery to have that done. Well, I'll say modern, when we started doing cataract surgery, we started in the 1700s. So back when they started in the 1700s, they'd have to have a chair where you'd get strapped down, and then they would have a guy come along and move that lens out of the way. And then later on, they figured out they could use cocaine eye drops and that sort of thing, to deaden the eye.
Numb it.
And then today's surgery is very sophisticated, of course, but turns out we did cataract surgery in 800 BC.
Jeez.
Mm,
Unreal.
yeah. And it was slightly different than how they do it today. It wasn't as effective either. So, and then we found, records from ancient Egypt in 2400 BC, where they did cataract surgery. So an amazing kind of a thing that we think is new. Humankind has been doing this for years, thousands of years.
I think I heard you talking about some kind of cranial surgery. Can you explain that one? That one is particularly fascinating to me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, somebody would get hit or hurt, where their skull would get damaged. It was probably fighting back then, got hit with an axe or who knows.
Right.
They found a way using a gold plate to put that in the skull and, allow the person to live a longer life. And they started in the year 400, and they've they found the skulls of these people all the way to the year 1400. And they were able to determine that in the year 400, they were 40% effective. And when they stopped doing it in the 1400s, they were over 90% effective.
Oh my gosh.
And so you may ask, how do you know it was 40%
Right.
and 90%?
Right.
For a person that lived, the skull would grow back partially over the gold inlay. And if the person didn't live, well, there's no, the bone wouldn't grow back, of course, because they passed away. So they knew they could look at the skulls and say, oh, they were very effective. So 90% is amazing. Yeah.
Unbelievable. It's just, it opens up so many questions. And I really love how you encourage people to think about, ancient civilizations differently. We often think of ourselves as the smartest ones, the ones with all the answers, like, oh, poor them, they worshiped clouds and brushed their teeth with sticks and stuff. When you hear about these findings, it's an instant perspective shift. What if they knew what we knew and even more? How do we know that when we find a new old discovery, let's say, how do we know that we are accurate in our interpretation of it? Whether it's, something like the vending machine that you said or a tool that we find, how do we know that we're right about how it was used? What's that process?
Yeah. Well, the vending machine, let's take that one for example.
Yeah.
The guy who did that, his name is Hero of Alexandria. He was an inventor. He wrote, books about. You can see the actual design in the book. It shows you how it was designed.
So
Yeah.
cool. We hear about the pyramids, we hear about Stonehenge, these things where we are just awestruck on how this happened. So, what are the theories out there of how we were able to make those versus something like the vending machine situation that comes basically with a user manual? We know how it was how it was designed, we get it. But the things that have really been lost, what are your favorite theories or what are your personal beliefs around it?
I took a look at the pyramids. There's 2.3 million 3-ton stones. Some weighed as much as 70 tons, by the way. They built that over 20 years. So that would mean you'd have to lay one stone every 2 minutes, 12 hours a day, 365 days a year for 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
Now, not only that, they laid them perfectly straight. There's no cracks in between them. They're perfectly level. They've lasted, 5,000 plus years. We would struggle to build something of that size and that immensity. And they must have had I contend they had some technology that we've just lost.
Yeah.
We don't know what it was. There is a group of people that say, "Oh, it was just aliens. They came here and did that." It's possible, but I really think it was something we did. I mean, you see, there's several of them, and we have other pyramids all around the world.
Right.
Now they're not exactly like that, but very similar in construction. I visited the Mayan ones in South America, and the concrete that they used in between that, we don't know how they made that concrete. It's very well made.
Wow.
My thought on all this, there's so many examples of this. Baghdad battery, they found batteries, 2,000 years old. They found 12 of them. They could generate up to, a volt, a little over a volt. Not going to power your house, but maybe power
Yeah.
a light bulb, or who knows. We know that there's these inventions. And I think, personally, I think is what we keep doing is getting in this cycle where we invent things, we make, our life better, easier to live, because the need is always there, to have a better life. And then we do something silly and forget it and lose it, or the Huns come in and burn Rome down, or whatever. The Library of Alexandria catches on fire and we lose all that. And so we have to be wise about what we're doing and how we're using our technology and that sort of thing, so we don't end up losing it all again.
Civilizations are getting wiped out, right? Throughout human history, whether it's natural disaster, war, disease. How would our civilization be wiped out, do you think, based on maybe what you've learned from going through all this historical research?
I talk about a Carrington event, a solar storm from the sun, a very large electromagnetic pulse with lots of energy. And there was one in 1856. It hit the Earth. Now, the sun has these from time to time, and they have to be pointed at the Earth for it to affect us at all. But they also, smaller ones, cause the aurora borealis that we see all the time. But this Carrington event was the solar storm was pointed at the Earth, and it electrified all the telegraph wires, electrified them all, and started fires at the ends of at the places where the telegraph people were working, because it just
Wow.
sent this energy blast all the way across these power lines.
Yeah.
What would happen today, if we
Right.
one of those events, what would that zap? Would that zap all your computers or whatever? I mean, you have no idea what might happen.
What is the cloud even anyway? Like, could that be wiped out? Where is this stuff being stored? How are we preserving it? Did this happen in the past at some point? And all that was left would be what would maybe be left from our civilization. I don't know, certain monuments, certain things in stone, buildings, stuff like that. Do you think there is a way we can start preserving this stuff? Or do you think we have to kind of go back to what's worked in the past, which is not of getting stuff on stone? Or I don't know, are any efforts being done in this area? Like, I don't know, are we utilizing space or something?
Yeah, there's all kinds of things being done, on different levels. The ultimate answer is we've got to figure it out. There is an organization called the Long Now Foundation. They think in the long term, and that's backed by a lot of pretty well-known people. That organization measures the date in tens of thousands of years. They're building a clock in Texas that'll run for 10,000 years. That's
Wow.
They're trying to get people to think, a little bit longer, more than
Yeah.
next year. There is in Norway, Slivabard, I might be mispronouncing that, Slivabard, they have a seed bank there where they've taken millions of seeds and they've put them in this seed bank that's buried in the snow in Norway to try to preserve that for the future.
Those Norwegians always know what they're doing, don't they?
They're pretty good. Danish too. I want to throw a word in there.
Yes, definitely.
That's really forward thinking, but we need more of that. We need some really smart people to think it through and for some wisdom to be put into place so that we can find this stuff later on.
Right.
We tend to think our technology is going to be here forever,
Yeah.
but a DVD or a CD, those only last 30 or 40 years and the pits get they oxidize.
Right.
Uh, think about, thumb drives or USB drives or solid state drives, SSD drives. How long do those last? How long does your computer last? 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, good point.
These things are not going to last. Way back, we put stuff in stone tablets. You couldn't put much information on that, but it would last 5,000 years or more. And then as we've progressed in time, we're putting more and more information into smaller and smaller areas that last shorter and shorter times. And all we need is an accident.
Right, to wipe everything out.
We're taking our information, putting it on denser things, with no thought about how long it lasts. We're not being thoughtful about it. We're thinking about, well, how much can we get on this, or how much money can I make if I make a really, I make a new USB drive where I can put 5 terabytes or something on it. We're thinking about that. We're not thinking about, well, what are our children's children going to have? If they find a buried cell phone in the backyard, are they going to know how to turn it on or open it up, or will they have power? We're not thinking about the longevity of things. I interviewed the head curator for the Internet Museum in San Francisco, and he told me that they have these old IBM computers, IBM PCs, some of the original computers. And what they do, they can't save the computer programs because they're on floppy disks. They, turn crumbly and that sort of thing after 20 years. So what they do is they take the computer program and they print it on paper.
Really? That's the great preservation process.
Yeah. Time capsules.
Mm.
Oglethorpe University has one that's the size of a room, and it's got a Coke can in it, and some things like that.
Great.
Yeah.
That's what we're preserving. Awesome.
Good for us. It's supposed to be opened in the year 8113. So that's a small example. My favorite example is about Thomas Crapper.
Heard of him.
Thomas did invent an improvement to the toilet, but the toilet was actually invented way long ago, in the 1500s, and they used them in castles.
Right.
Ancient Rome had all kinds of sewers and water distribution systems. If you look even back further, the Babylonians, we have examples of where they had sewer systems and that sort of thing. But in the Middle Ages, in the 1300s, we had sewage running off the tops of buildings and into the streets because we didn't have toilets or sewers. We keep finding these things and then forget or whatever, and then we find it again.
If you had to take an educated guess, what do you think would survive? And what do you think would be gone? And what do you think, whatever the surviving artifacts, let's say, what do you think that would help future generations infer about us based on the findings?
Depends on what they find, of course.
Right, well, they're going to see the Coke bottle at some point.
Well, it's really interesting because there's been some shows written about this, The World Without Us, and they kind of delved very deeply into this. What would happen if we weren't here? It's very fast. Like within 100 years, like the homes just become, fractions of what they are today. Everything starts leaking, the wood starts rotting, anything that's not rock is gone. So if somebody finds us far in the future, they're going to find maybe steel, big steel structures in the sky, wondering what in the world were they doing with these? But they probably, just like us, we go back and we find, ancient civilizations. We find where the homes were. We find where the people were buried. And they'll probably find, a few artifacts here and there. But especially you look at what they find in Egypt, they find little toys that the kids played with or baskets and that sort of thing. So I imagine they'll find the same thing about us. Without power, without understanding how we use electricity, they're probably not going to be able to turn anything on or make it functional unless it may be a bicycle or something like that. But any records that are, it's very possible, books, if they're stored in a good place, those could last for 1,000 years. Any kind of recorded material is not going to last, magnetic tape, movies, or anything digital probably is not going to be there.
Gosh, this is just so weird to think about. I mean, are you just constantly blowing your own mind? It's weird to think that future generations could think of our satellites the way that we think of, the pyramids or something, of like what could that be? How is learning about this stuff relevant to, just like the everyday person who's maybe thinking, okay, this doesn't really seem like my problem, right? I'm not a scientist, I don't work for the government. I don't know how to preserve knowledge for thousands of years. Why is it important that we all kind of know about this stuff or think about it? How can it help us? Who is the person in your life that's the hardest to shop for during the holidays, birthdays, really any time of year? I have been told that I am actually that person. I'm a minimalist, so I like quality, functionality, something that's ethically sourced. When I purchase a new gift for myself or someone else, I prioritize all of those things as well, which is why I love Cozy Earth. They have incredible everyday essentials like comfy loungewear and bedding. I have their bamboo stretch knit pajama set in one of my favorite colors, olive green. It is the softest thing that's ever touched my body. They have this bubble blanket. It's got a nice weight to it, but it's not too heavy. It's just something that people immediately notice when they walk into our living room and they want to touch it and try it out. Absolutely makes such a great gift. Black Friday has come early at Cozy Earth. Right now, you can stack my code HELPLESS on top of their site-wide sale, giving you up to 40% off in savings. These deals will not last, so start your holiday shopping today. I personally like to get my shopping done early, and if you get a post-purchase survey, be sure to mention that you heard about Cozy Earth on Self-Helpless. Wrap the ones you love in luxury with Cozy Earth.
Number one, awareness is a catalyst for change. I had somebody ask me a question on, I'm doing something for my family and I'm putting it on this drive somewhere in the cloud, He said, is that the right thing for me to do? And I said, well, think about it. If you really want your children and your children's children to have it, are they going to be able to find it? Are they going to know? Do they have the password? Are they
Right.
to log into it or whatever? You just think it through. And he says, yeah, I was thinking about making it into a book. And I said, well, there you go. Maybe a book's a good idea. But I
Mm.
think for each of us, it's our own decision on how we want to do that. Just being aware of it can help you in your personal life, what you do and where you put your information, how you save it.
Great point of personalizing it with family records or things like that. So, have you found anything that suggests that people who came before us cared about preservation or prioritized that with us in mind, thousands of years later? Or, did they have libraries just like we do? Because that's how, it's a nice way to educate people, it's accessible, all of that. Or were they thinking ahead? Is there any evidence that they were thinking ahead for us?
Yeah. George Washington buried a time capsule at the White House.
Oh,
Um, they've looked for it, but we haven't been able to find that one either. And the other problem with them is if there were some made, let's say there was some put in there by the ancient Egyptians or something. Well, maybe they put it somewhere that we just haven't found. It could be,
right.
and it's very likely that there's more out there somewhere that we have yet to find. And they're finding stuff all the time.
Oh, it's so sad for us that even when we try, we lose it. Has this led you to consider bigger questions like the fact that we kind of seem to be keep getting wiped out, as a civilization, we have to start over from scratch or maybe we find remnants of things that help. Do you ever think that maybe it's by design that we're not supposed to collect all the knowledge forever and continue to pass it down? Has it led to any of those kind of bigger, maybe more, I don't know, existential questions for you?
Yeah, yeah. No, it is a thought that maybe we're doing this on purpose until we get it right. See, it's not about us as individuals. It's about us as a culture. It's about everyone, working together to do this. So it's not
Mm.
until we get this like um, cultural awareness that will save the knowledge for the future so we can keep growing and keep getting smarter and maybe that's the wisdom part. We got to keep getting wise too.
Yeah, it's interesting how if we continue to destroy each other, we're really destroying everyone. Or I wonder if there was ever a time where there was a discovery that people thought was going to be really positive, but it ended up being really negative, and they destroyed it on purpose so future generations would not repeat the same mistakes.
A lot of knowledge rests on language. There's a really famous text that's at the Bernanke Museum at Yale University. And that text, they've radiocarbon dated it to the 1400s. really interesting. If you get a chance, go look it up. It's the Voynich manuscript. Linguists and cryptologists and scholars have all been able to verify that this script is a real language written by real people
Wow.
because they can do tests. They can do certain tests on the language to know if it's real or made up. If it's made up like Vulcan on Star Trek or
Oh,
Star
yeah, right.
Hobbit language or whatever.
Yeah.
This is a real language, and since they've had this, no one's been able to decode it. Not a single person. It's got all kinds of pictures of like plants that are kind of foreign looking, and people dancing and different things, and yeah, but they can't read it.
Fascinating. And, do you know anything about how like, the process of how they determine if a language is real or fantastical because it was for entertainment or something versus it was something that was used in
Mm.
daily life?
I do know a little bit about it. There's certain laws that if they take the number of letters in, say, a written text, and they know natural languages follow a certain pattern where you have more of certain words and then less and less and less, of other words. And so just the number of words and the number of letters they know follow that pattern.
What a wild job to have. Whoever is doing that stuff, that is so cool. Has there been a certain discovery that has been maybe more controversial than others because it may be challenged or even debunked maybe certain religious beliefs for people or, cultural practices or anything like that that you're aware of?
I'll talk about one I can think of off the top here,
Yeah.
the Hopinan civilization. That civilization lived in, they were about 5,300 years ago and about around 2,500 BC. Now, this is near Pakistan and India. And by the way, there are some records in the Bhagavad Gita that lead one to believe that was an atomic explosion. And this part of the country has a very interesting artifacts that they've found where they found sand that has been turned into glass. And they found other pieces of pottery and things that have been sort of glassified, sort of the kind of thing that happens in an atomic explosion. People are wondering, and there's a lot written about this.
Wow.
So there could be, it maybe other cultures figured that out just like we did, just thousands of years ago.
Is there anything that you hope we go back to, from maybe more ancient times because the modern way that we might be doing something is actually counterproductive or even harmful to us? Like, do you think that we can learn from our ancestors in that way as well?
Yeah. Well, I think there's several cultures that have lasted the test of time. Indians, American Indians,
Mhm,
they have a love of the earth, and
mhm.
that's your Mother Earth. Takes care of us, it gives us the ground to make food and protects us from the sun, and that kind of a very straightforward, thoughtful life is one that can persevere. No matter what happens, if all the cars, melt or blow up or whatever, still, you still have the earth, you can make food, we can take care of one another. I think that kind of a culture and that kind of thought process is one that'll go on forever.
Absolutely. So do you think maybe that is the ultimate lesson? Our technological advances that end up being, what ruin us. Do you think that that's the lesson that we have been trying to learn for thousands of years to just maybe keep things simple instead of, I don't know, striving for more and more and more? Or what do you think the balance might be?
Yeah. Yeah, certainly it's a big picture. It's a cultural kind of a shift that we have to take. Yeah.
I'm curious just for you personally, what are you hoping that we find? Like what would be so exciting for you if we discovered it tomorrow that maybe cracked some codes for you or answered some questions that you have?
Oh, yeah. Well, my personal hope is that we find a library somewhere This Long Now Foundation has made a disc that's made out of nickel that won't corrode, and they've put 13,000 pages of information on it that in all different, I don't know, 1,000 different languages or something. I have to believe there is somewhere buried, and there are some people who believe there's something buried, like in Egypt or under the Sphinx or
Mm.
someplace. I think there's going to be more knowledge out there, and maybe we're not finding it because we're not ready for it yet. You know,
Mm.
probably maybe we'd make the same mistake they made, whatever that was. And I think advancement means different things. I mean, we're technologically advanced. Well, maybe they were advanced in a different way, how to use the earth or something different than what our understanding of things is. Our whole technology and all of our physics is all based on theories. It's just a theory, it's just a model. It's not actually the way things work. It's just a way of thinking about it. And so we keep clarifying it. But maybe what if you started with a different base of understanding? You had a different model. And so you would have grew up differently and came up with a different reality or different knowledge than what we have.
Yeah, that is fascinating to think about, because of these like stop and starts that we that we seem to enjoy as humans, that everybody was going a totally different direction maybe with their knowledge. Like maybe some people were really focused on the sky and utilizing that. Some people were focused on the ground and some people were focused on other natural resources. It's really interesting to think that everybody discovered something different and maybe some of that will be rediscovered and maybe some of it won't. Maybe we'll just never know that again.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Al- Alchemists back in the day, what they believed everything was fire, water, earth, and air. Their basis was different. Yeah.
Has anything that you learned maybe shifted some personal beliefs of yours through your research or anything like that? Has it challenged you in a way that you didn't really anticipate?
First, I thought, hey, we're not very smart. Keep doing this over and over again. What are we doing living in the streets with sewage running down the streets? That is not. And we have the Black Plague, all this stuff happens. I just turned it around and said, hey, we have to be more humble about what we know. Say, hey, maybe we don't know it all. Maybe, I could use some information that somebody else has in a different way,
Right,
be a little bit humble, or maybe I need to invent something new. What makes the most sense? What's the best for the big picture? You know.
right. Absolutely. Jack, this was so much fun. I've never really thought about this in this much detail, and I'm so glad that you've written this book to encourage all of us to do that. Is there anything that we didn't cover today that you think is especially interesting or important for people to know, whether it's from the book or anything else that you're researching right now? And then where can people find you, your work, the book, all that good stuff?
Well, I can say I am working on a follow-on book.
Ah,
Investigate monoliths and megaliths, both above ground and below ground. What common thread is there between all these things? And we're going to take a spiritual uh, side to it as well. Say, were these places for healing, or what was really the purpose of these? You're
so
gonna
cool.
been great here, Delaney.
So much fun. And where can people find your book and
Oh, yeah.
more about you?
So, Lost in Time, or Forgotten and Vanishing Knowledge. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can get it at any bookstore. Really can order it for you, and it's available on hardback, paperback, Kindle, and you can find it. Also, you can find more information on my website, lostintime.world.
Thanks for hanging out with Self-Helpless. Feel free to share this with someone who could use it, and you can binge related conversations linked in the show notes. Ad-free episodes are now available on Patreon, and because I'm practically allergic to social media, the best way to get notified about new episodes is to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or join the email list at selfhelplesspodcast.com, where you will also find some free goodies like a watch and read list and the quote buffet. All right, love you big time, and thank you so much.